Some phones are so ugly, you just have to ask, who approved this? Seriously, what was the design team thinking? Today, we're digging into the archives to find the phones that just abandoned all common sense. Before we get to our top picks for these aesthetic disasters, I want to hear from you in the comments. What's the one phone design from the past that you just hated when it came out? And hey, if you enjoy these deep dives into the stranger side of tech, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. It really helps. Let's start with a device that tried way too hard to be a fashion accessory. The Siemens Xelibri line from 2003 wanted to be wearable tech. The whole line was questionable, but the Xelibri 6, it was just baffling. Siemens decided their target audience really wanted a phone that looked exactly like a makeup compact. The result was this bizarre circular clamshell. You open it up and you get two mirrors and a tiny, almost unusable screen. The keys, they were just scattered awkwardly around the circular edge. Can you imagine trying to send a text on this thing? It was a total ergonomic nightmare. This was a classic case of forcing a design just to be different. It felt cheap, and the phone part felt like a complete afterthought. It was basically plastic jewelry that could maybe make a call. Just weird. Nokia took a lot of risks in its golden age. Usually it paid off big time, but sometimes they went a little too art school with it. Let's talk about the Nokia 7380. Everyone just calls it the lipstick phone for obvious reasons. The biggest design flaw here, it had no keypad, none, zero. To do anything on this phone, you had to use this little scroll wheel, kind of like an old iPod. Dialing a simple phone number became this painfully slow task. You had to scroll, select a digit, scroll, select the next digit. It took forever. Look, maybe it looked intriguing as an art piece, but as an actual phone for daily use, it was practically useless. Nokia, what were you thinking here? All right, let's move into the PDA era, right before the iPhone changed everything. Meet the Samsung SCHI 760. This was from a time when manufacturers had no idea how to make the complex Windows Mobile OS easy to use. So Samsung's solution? Just add all the input methods, all of them. The front of this thing was a cluttered mess. It had a standard number pad and a confusing D-pad and navigation buttons. But wait, there's more. It also slid open to reveal a keyboard. The result was this chunky, overly complex brick. It didn't look like a phone. It looked like three different gadgets got glued together in a panic. Just a total design mess. Seriously, some designs make you wonder if anyone in the approval meeting raised their hand and said no. The Toshiba G450 might be the strangest hybrid device ever sold. It looks less like a phone and more like a bloated USB stick or maybe a cheap MP3 player. The face was split into three distinct circles. The top one had a tiny screen. The other two circles split the numeric keypad. I'm not kidding. Numbers 1 through 6 were on the middle circle and 7 through 0 were on the bottom one. Why? It was an ergonomic disaster. You had to completely relearn how to dial a number, and holding this thing up to your ear, you just looked silly. Motorola gave us the iconic, super cool Razr, a true classic. They also gave us this, the V100, or as most people called it, the V-Box. This came out when translucent colored plastic was the big trend. Thanks, iMac. But Motorola applied that look in the worst possible way. It looks exactly like a cheap toy laptop designed for a toddler, my first computer kind of thing. It was this chunky, see-through blue clamshell with a tiny screen, and the keyboard, it was this mushy, rubbery thing. Imagine a business person in a meeting pulling this out. You'd look ridiculous. This next phone, the Samsung Upstage, is a special kind of failure. It represents a total failure to commit. Samsung tried to solve the phone versus MP3 player problem by literally being two-sided. One side was a standard basic-looking phone with a small screen, then you'd hit a flip button on the side, and the other side would light up, a larger screen with touch media controls. It was so confusing to use. You were constantly pressing buttons on the back by accident while just trying to hold it. It was this weird two-faced gadget that ended up being a bad phone and a bad MP3 player. Just pick one, Samsung. Here's another Nokia, the 7600, one of the company's first attempts at a 3G phone, and for this big launch, they decided to abandon the standard rectangular shape. Instead, they made this: a teardrop, a leaf, a video game character. Who knows? The square screen was just plopped in the middle and the number keys were split down both sides of it. This meant you absolutely needed two hands just to dial a number or type a text. It was incredibly wide, felt super awkward to hold, and looked less like a cutting-edge 3G tool and more like a prop from a bad sci-fi movie. Even as smartphones matured into the black glass slabs we know today, companies still found ways to make objectively ugly hardware. Case in point, the LG Optimus Vu. This was LG's big attempt to compete with the original Samsung Galaxy Note phablet, but they made one critical error: the aspect ratio. Instead of a widescreen format, LG used a 4:3 screen. This made the phone insanely wide and almost impossible to use comfortably with one hand. It looked exactly like a normal, sleek smartphone that had been put in a vise and squashed. Next on our list, few phones in history are as universally mocked for their shape as the Virgin Mobile Lobster 700 TV. It was an ambitious device for its time. It included a digital radio tuner and could even watch broadcast mobile TV. But to accommodate all that special hardware, Virgin Mobile just added a massive asymmetrical hump to the right side of the phone. It looked like the device had some kind of grotesque, inorganic growth. This made it incredibly uncomfortable to hold, especially in your right hand, and visually it was just lopsided and wrong. It's a perfect example of a product that no one wanted to be seen using, no matter how cool the TV feature was. And just to prove this isn't all ancient history, let's talk about the Nokia 9 PureView from 2019. From the front, it looked like a perfectly normal flagship, but the back was another story. HMD Global wanted the ultimate camera phone, so they placed 5 separate camera lenses, plus sensors and a flash in this circular array. The resulting pattern looked a lot like the compound eyes of a spider. It actively triggered trypophobia, that visceral fear or disgust of clustered holes in a ton of people. It's a rare example of a modern premium phone being called ugly, not because it was cheap, but because its defining feature was just high-key creepy to look at. So, looking back at this museum of weirdness, you have to admit, at least they were interesting, right? Today, almost every phone is a predictable, boring glass rectangle. These ugly phones came from an era when companies were willing to take huge risks. Even if those risks, they remind us that true innovation sometimes requires making a few massive mistakes along the way. Now, I really want to hear your stories down below in the comment section. Did you ever own one of these ugly devices? And be honest, did you secretly kind of like it despite what everyone else said? Let me know your experiences. If you enjoyed this trip through the Hall of Shame, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel for more in-depth tech dives.